So at this point, I've just finished making one of the circles. I'm making sure to flatten it out. At this point, I didn't realize we had a rolling pin, and I'm using the slanted tool to slant out the sides. Then I'll use the needle to start etching in the wooden texture. Okay, so previously, using monster clay, I made one of the circles of the spool and I used that and traced it as kind of like a template for the next one. Here they both are. They're not the exact same, which is okay because I do want them to look a little bit messy. I have the hole in them. I also drew the wooden designs on them, if you can see, sort of. I think that's me using the blow dryer to heat up the clay. Ah, yes, so I can puncture a hole into it. Not that that's gonna matter. I believe at some point I also, if I haven't already, yeah, yep, I go back in again and make sure that that hole is actually clean. The wood styling aspect, I just used one of the needle point tools. It was super easy. You start drawing like a bunch of oval shapes and you draw one oval and then you draw more ovals inside that oval getting smaller. Then you just start drawing lines that are wavy that basically change shape going round the oval, if that makes sense. It was fairly easy, but I wanted this one to be fairly easy because again, I've never used monster clay before. Also, I figured while I'm here and while I'm pretty much doing the fine detail working, I would explain a little bit of my inspiration for what I'm going for. Basically, I was inspired by the very cutesy old fashioned Disney movies, more specifically, one of the spools that was in the sewing montage in the old Cinderella movie. But I wanted to take like a bit of a darker, grungier twist on it because I knew this being my first time with Monster Clay, it wasn't going to be very clean and perfect looking, so I wanted it to be destroyed, I wanted it to be weathered. I essentially wanted to make it look like it is seen a lot in a way. So I plan to have like some chipping, some split parts. When it comes to painting and characterizing it, I almost want the wooden appeal to it because I do want it to look like it's made of wood. I want the wood to almost appear weathered, maybe even a bit moldy, like some water has gone to it or some mildew. So, yeah, that is my inspiration for that. And as you can see here, I've made some scratch marks on both the bottom and the top of the cylindrical part and also on the flat surfaces of the circles, so that way when I apply heat to both of them, it makes it easier to press together. Now this was good temporarily, but when it eventually came out of the mold, it fell apart, but again, nothing that can't be put back together. Think, yep, this is me. Yep, melting once again. I try not to blast it too hard, otherwise I find that kind of blurs away the engravings that I did. Yeah, it's a start. This is me assembling it. I press very delicately because it is still sort of soft from the blow dryer. And this is what it looks like. It's a little bit messy, but that is actually what I'm going for. I want it to look messy and I want it to look slightly weathered. So this is good. Okay, in the short clip, I haven't yet glued it to my board, but I've taken a piece of plastic and kind of created a circular barrier around my spool. I've taped up the side and I've got a pair of bolt cutters just to keep it from coming apart. I've also taken a cube of monster clay and glued it to my board and stuck my spool on top to act as a barrier from the ground. All I need to do is go talk to Tanya and make sure it's adequate sizing, and then I can glue it to my board. And that will happen in the next part. And in this part, I am gluing the circle barrier to the board. I'm doing this to make sure that none of the silicone that I pour for my mold escapes, so we are saving potential wastage. When I discussed this over with Tanya, she actually suggested that I do my barrier even a little bit smaller because it was a little too wide, and that would just be a waste of some good silicone. So I did that. This was me also measuring some of the keys, just so I have enough space. There's me. That's me popping the spool inside. It looks good. It's sturdy. And yeah, it's ready to mold. So this is me discussing my measurements with Tanya. My measurements for the mold were 9 times 9 times 10 divided by 2 divided by 2 again, which left me with 202.5, which I rounded up to 203.5. 203, sorry. This is me pouring my part B. I'm using the scale to make sure that my measurements are correct because they have to be exactly the same. And again, this is me also clarifying with Tanya that I'm doing this right and I'm not wasting product because wastage is bad. Okay, so now we have gotten to the point where I am pasting a release agent along the sides of the wall so it makes it easier to break apart. Tanya sprays my actual sculpt with a different release agent. That one I just previously used with the paintbrush is not allowed to touch my sculpture, it's only for the sides. Now I'm taking my part A in a pop stick and emptying it into a jug. Then I'm taking another pop stick and emptying part B. I need to use separate pop sticks because that is cross-contamination otherwise. And now I'm stirring. I've learned that you don't want to whisk, you want to stir firmly because stirring in a whisking motion actually invites bubbles into it, which is obviously the opposite that you want. I'm making sure that I scrape the sides and also the bottom to make sure everything is completely mixed and not marbled because that can also affect it. As you can see, my mixture is pretty clear. And this is me pouring it and it is looking really good. Now at this point, Tanya and I are discussing on using some pre-made keys. I just have to let that cure for a little bit. So it was a couple minutes. I let the silicone cure a little bit so I can pop those pre-made silicone keys in with a pair of tweezers, and I left that part A to dry. and next will be the part B. Okay, so this video was actually filmed by either Gray or Jazz. While I was on break, Jazz had made too much silicone, so at this point my part A of my mold had already completely cured. So just so they didn't waste it, they decided to do my part B for me. Thank you, Jazz. That was incredibly great. I'm incredibly grateful for that. She's pouring it from a high angle so all the bubbles have a chance to fall out before they go inside the barrier. And she's pouring it really nice and gently, very slow, all the way up to the top, just like that. Brilliant. And then that goes on the shelf to cure. So in this next part, this is me putting my gloves. I have my apron on and my mask on. This is all my proper PPE. So in this part, I had previously cut open my 2-part mold to take out my sculpt so I can get ready to cast. Now this is me putting it back together and sealing it with some silicone so it's ready. I am a little bit messy with it, but also I don't want anything coming out. Don't want any leaks. The only part that I will be leaving open is the hole in the top, which is going to act as the channel or the pour spout. As you can see, I'm being very thorough with this. It's not the nicest looking mold, I know that, but also this never leaked, so I think I did something right. Double checking everywhere, mainly because, again, no leaks is the main goal here. And that's me disposing my gloves. And I believe that is it. That is what it looks like. Okay, so I briefly discussed my measurements with Tanya. My measurements were 4 times 4 times 6 divided by 2, which is 48 grams. And this is for the spool. Now for part A, because we're using Megapore resin, part A is 100%, part B is 50%. So part A is 48 grams, part B is 24 grams. This is me mixing it currently. And also, just as a little tester for an experiment, I decided to add 8 drops of coffee color drops. Yeah, coffee coloring. I gradually added it slowly. I started out with 3 and then I did a couple more and a couple more until I eventually got to 8 and it became sort of the color that I wanted. I didn't want to go too dark because I figured I'd be darkening it up with paint. I just wanted to give it a test. And this is me stirring it. I don't have to work insanely fast with this one because Megapore takes about 17 to 19 hours to cure, so I wasn't in a massive rush. That's sort of what it looked like. And this is the part where I pour it in through the little hole at the top. I'd like to do it slowly just because it needs some time to settle into all of the little parts, all the little cracks. There's Jazz in the back, who's being incredibly helpful. Stirring because, again, I want to make sure that the colour's not messy, like marbled or anything. I want it to be all one cohesive colour. That's me doing the colouring drops again. Keep stirring, stir, stir, stir. There's Tanya. Say hi, Tanya. And there I am pouring it in. Okay, so this is me cutting open the mold after letting it sit for a couple of days. It's a very long and finicky job. I'm using an X-Acto knife, and also at the same time I'm peeling off some of the silicone that tends to just come off with it in kind of like a flaky motion. All the while I'm talking to my friends. But yeah, I start taking off some of the silicone that I had to put around the center part of the cylinder, because that will make the actual crease between, or like the crack between the two parts, easier to break open. And you can see them visibly struggling, so I enlist Sarah's help. There she is, the muscle of the group. I'm trying to be as careful as possible because I don't want to cut a finger, mine or Sarah's. So the top one we've able to move, and then Sarah runs away and leaves me to fend for myself. How rude. So we've noticed right off the bat, I should probably mention that this was a second cast that I did of the spool, mainly because one of the girls, I believe it was Yana, actually had too much gold resin left over, so we used it instead. If you can probably see, it's flooded a little bit in the center and it looks a little bit janky, but again, that's what we're going for. And as for the flooding part that's kind of stuck in the middle, that is nothing I can't Dremel off. And making sure that that mold's clean in case I ever want to use it again. And now we're on to Dremeling. Alright, this is a short clip of me Dremeling using the Dremeling tool. I believe this is actually just a nail filer. I was able to actually break off most of the spillage that happened around the center part. This is just to get off any chipping parts. I try to do this as little as possible so it doesn't take away any of the wooden detail. And also I used it just to flatten, give the hole at the bottom a little bit more definition because that kind of got lost during the casting. Also, I'm wearing all the proper PPE. I have my apron, I have my mask, and I have my eye goggles on. And I'm also dremeling with butcher's paper underneath so nothing gets ruined. And I have headphones on because it's loud. But yeah, it looks good. Previously, I sprayed it with the priming spray and also did a coat of this dark brown, and now I'm painting over that coat with a lighter brown. Next, I'm filling in all of the wood carvings with a dark brown, which is predominantly black, and I'm patting it out with my finger so it stays within the lines, and if it gets anywhere else, it has a more faded effect. It doesn't matter if it's neat, mainly because I'm going to be covering it with other stuff. It's not on camera, but I also colored the dents with a lighter beige color to look like chips. And they didn't look, I wasn't completely sold on them, but again, I was going to cover it with some mold. So in the end, it would basically look very effective. That's what the end part of this product looks like. Then I take a lighter color than that beige and gently just dust it with a fan brush over the little chipping area so it still has that woodish texture to it. Again, didn't look the best, but also it's going to get covered anyway. That's me researching and getting like a proper idea of what to do. Mixing a grey and then taking it very lightly on a fan brush, very lightly. I made that mistake. If I have to dab it with a paper towel, that works as well. But the key is to have as little on the brush as possible so I have more control over it. Less is more in this case. And this is going to work as my weathering. And I can add as much or as little in the places that I want. But for most of it, I'm going in an up and downwards motion to follow the wood carvings. In the last part, I also added some black and some dark brown around any ridges and also in the holes just to look more three-dimensional. Now it's time for my favorite part. I took some of the green on a fan brush and I started just doing an upwards downwards motion just like I did with the grey in certain spots, again varying. Then I took a lighter green on the toothbrush and stippled it, and then I took some white on the stipple sponge, stippling that to create the effect of mould. And I kept going in with that over and over and over again, basically just hitting any places that I know would naturally get wet and where mould would naturally grow. This is also really helpful if I have a place that looks a little bit incorrect or looks a little bit wrong. I can cover it with mould. Again, I'm being very generous with this. I'm also taking little bits of black on the fan brush and lightly dusting the inside of the chipping areas to make them look a little bit more weathered and a bit more eroded than some of the other more flat surfaced parts. Because I'm trying to gently work with acrylic paint and oftentimes it can come across as very harsh, I also take my finger or a paper towel just to gently pat over it if needed. Because again, mold looks stronger in some places and it looks weaker in other places. And that's the final product. So right now I'm currently this is obviously being cut down quite a lot because this was nearly 40 minutes long. And this is the original design, however, over time it has gotten thicker. It is also, I also took away the crescents because they would have been too thin to cast properly. The holes in which I'm going to be putting gems or leaving them empty have gotten bigger and wider and also deeper. The little slit where the blade is going to be seated in that area has also gotten thicker. Everything in general has gotten thicker because this was far too thin to be capturing anything. And the cut itself has gotten deeper. Originally, I was going to do engravings until Tanya gave me the idea to use the sausage maker and chop them up into teeny tiny little bits and make the aeroglyphs that I would I'm currently engraving on my handle right now and make them more 3D. I also made the little turning in parts just turned out because, again, a lot of stuff can go wrong there. Little too wrong, and I made the end, instead of being pointy, I made it round and gave it another hole for a gem to put in. Now, mind you, both sides are completely symmetrical, but they were also inclined to get messy. So, I've taken a clay slab,
we get some of this wet clay, it dries very
carved
quickly.
the shape of my
Getting that
form
onto it straight away and keep it damp at all times.
dug out a little bit, place my slab
slab
inside and
halfway around. You're creating
molded it around it, and then I've
Yep.
cut out the shape
This is the first time. Have you ever done it
of my
this way
mold,
before?
and
I only did the flat
put some holes in
Yeah.
for where the keys are going to go.
Yep. So this is all.
I've also taken a wet brush and just kind of
Excellent that we are.
made sure the edges are nice and clean.
Yeah. So make sure it doesn't go. Yeah.
I've covered
Just below
the form at least halfway. I'm going to start building my walls, but I'm just going to add a little bit more concrete onto the end so I can also
We're going to pop Lily in
add
here.
a channel to pour through.
So yeah,
And that's
all
Lily.
covered.
So this is me finishing up the barrier of the dagger handle. Also, while I'm here, I'm just going to discuss my measurements for the moulding. My measurements were 13 times 23 times 3 divided by 2 and divided by 2 again, which equals 224 grams. Now, because I am doing this wet clay style, I have to do this one layer, and then I have to repeat the process again, which I don't think I actually have footage of. I think it might have actually deleted itself. But as you can see, I'm making sure it's airtight. I don't want any leaks whatsoever. And Tanya's looked over and had an inspection, and she pointed out that there was a little hole on one section. So I am hot gluing the life out of it just to make sure that no mold silicone escapes.
Literally dying. It was pretty intense.
There's so much. I think that should be good. Okay.
Radio. So now you can pour.
What am I doing? No.
Just keep an eye that you don't have any leaks.
I'm really keen to see it.
Farewell, I'll be to say have fun. It's nice to say I'm nearly quite done.
You got this, keep breathing.
Wow, I'm so good at singing. I should do musical theatre. Hardy, hardy, har. I'm worried about that side.
No, it's holding.
I'm talking about this one. Oh no, that one looks like it's holding as well. Oh hell yeah. Yeah.
Going good so far.
Just gonna travel over here a bit. Hi guys.
Squeeze.
You get a little bit as well.
Nothing was happening, nope.
Nothing. Just give it a little mix. It's a little bit motley in there.
Yeah.
An extra. Not have to wait for Jasmine.
I don't mind, that's fine. I'm not too sure how much I need anyway.
You're not getting any.
That's right. Cover your dagger.
Tanya, I'm thinking of doing 280, 280.
Yeah, what was this one?
So this one was 270.
Yeah, that's fine.
280 is good.
Yep.
Yeah. Sweet. Awesome. I will
Delicious.
Amazing, thank you.
Have fun. I know I did. Oh, there's a little one there. Okay.
Just to glue it together all the way along. Yeah, all the way along.
I'm trying not to get the ram horn in our sealer.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
That's okay. That's all. Just needs a little bit.
Where are you coming from? Yeah, there's just a little one right there. You don't need to be going anywhere, good sir.
Beautiful. It is complete.
I did it! Now I just need to wait for it to cure. Ow. Toodaloo! So this is the two-part mold finally molded together, so there are no cracks. I believe this was the third time I attempted this. The fourth time I never caught on camera, but I have two cardboard pieces on either side and they are elasticated together just to give it some more sturdiness. I have a towel and a bucket for it to sit in so it's sitting upright and it doesn't tilt. In this video I'm using Megapore, but at the very end the product that I end up using is the quick dry resin. And my measurements for that were 1.5 times 17.5 times 9.5 divided by 2, which was 125. Now with the Megapore, it's meant to be part A equals 100%, part B equals 50, so that would have been 125 and 62.5 grams. But with the quick dry, I just used 125 all up. And I'm pouring it in slowly in small increments, and then I'm tapping it on the sides to make sure the bubbles get in, that the resin gets in all the crevices and the bubbles rise to the surface. But this is only the third attempt and it didn't work because it ended up flooding and making the silicone go weird. This is me unwrapping. I believe this is me unwrapping attempt number 4. I'm taking an X-Acto knife and carving around the edges. I'm basically pulling off any loose silicone or silicone that comes loose. It's not going to damage the actual mold because this was just the silicone I used to seal up the two-part. And the quick dry resin did get into some of the crevices and kind of flooded throughout the mold, which wasn't ideal, but it was nothing that a pair of pliers and some Dremel tools couldn't fix. So there I am, pulling it apart. There's Lily standing behind me, watching everything. I think she's criticizing my poor knife wielding skills. But yeah, as you can see, the strips of silicone just come off actually quite easily. And I'm able just to open my mold up, and as you can see, it has flooded everywhere, but it has also gotten a lot of my design, so that's good. And in the next scene, you'll see me using the Dremel tools. I also used the pliers to cut off a lot of the main stuff, and then I used, here we are with the Dremeling tool, just to file down and fix anything and polish anything that needed to be fixed. Now I'm wearing my proper PPE, I'm wearing my apron, I've got my safety glasses on so no sawdust goes into my eyes. There's grey in the background. I have a mask on so I don't ingest or breathe anything in. I also have headphones on because Dremel tools are incredibly loud and it hurts my ears. And I'm doing all of this on butcher's paper, so that way, one, it's easier to clean up, and so if the machine turns on, it doesn't ruin the table. But yeah, I'm being very gentle with this because these Dremel tools rely on speed, not on strength, and if I push too hard, it will overheat the machine and over time it will ruin it. Okay, so we have gotten to the painting part. Also, ignore the paint on my face and my hands. It's just inevitable. So, for starters, I had my handle sprayed with the priming spray that Tanya did outside. Then I coated it with a dark brown. Well, actually, it was more of a reddish brown, and I mixed it with a bit of navy blue to make it darker. And I did just a couple base coats of that. Then I took the copper nitrate paint and splotched that on, and then took paper towels and pressed on it throughout to make it look kind of worn out. And then as you can see on my palette, I have 3 separate shades of teal, which I took on toothbrushes to make it look like the copper had oxidized over time. And now what I'm doing at the moment, it looks silly, but I'm taking a selection of hair on the fan brush with some black paint and painting in any crevices or cracks that happen to show up on the handle, just to make it look extra broken. But before I did that, I took some gold paint and went over the aeroglyphs. And if it was too gold, I just simply patted over it, because again, we want it to look old and crusty and gross. I believe the only thing that's left to do, I also add a little bit of black in the crevice where the blade will go. The only thing left to do is put on the setting spray.